I wanted to update my invert tutorial video because I realized I never put in all of these amazing ways to get upside down without actually having to invert. So first, let's just look at the leg position we're going to do once we get upside down. If we don't know where our legs are going, we're going to be flailing around, panicking, and it's going to make it a lot harder. So I'm going to start off on my right side. So this is with the pole in my left armpit. We're just going to lie on the floor, and I do want you to try this with me, but you can just watch the first time. My outside hand is going to be on top, really important. So this side, this will be my right hand. So pole in the left armpit, right hand on top. I'm going to use my left leg to start to lift my hips. You might need to do a little bit of a jump, depending on how strong you are, or how bendy you are. And we're going to take the outside leg, so on this side, the right leg, around the front of the pole. Even if you can just get your tippy toes on to begin with, that's good. But we are aiming to get it behind the calf, kind of on the Achilles, okay? We're then going to use that leg, whether it's on the toe or the back of the heel, to get our hips nice and high. We're then going to take our inside leg, and the knee is going to be to the other side of the pole that your body is. The foot is going to come across. So you might be able to see I am crossing at my ankles. And I'm thinking about getting my legs as straight as I can without them popping off. And they're just crossing over. Think of it like you're climbing legs, just upside down. Okay, so let's look at that again on this side, then we'll look at the left. So pole in the left armpit, right hand on top. Right leg is going to come up around the front of the pole, so that's where you can see, right in front of your face. Ideally behind the heel, but if you can only get it on the toe to begin with, use that to get your hips up. Push your leg into the pole as you squeeze your bum and thrust your hips up to the ceiling. Get as high as you can at this point. So my knee is around the front, my foot is around the front. My second leg, the knee goes the other side of the pole. So you want to think like the pole's between your knees, but the foot goes to the other side. So both legs are crossing on the pole at the ankle. Try and get your hips as high as you can, and think about squeezing from toes to thighs. Okay, other side. So now the pole is in my right armpit, and I have my left hand on top. I use my right leg to start to lift the hips, and my left leg is going to come around the front. Look how this side I have no control at all. I start swinging immediately. Practice both sides, guys. So left leg is around the front. Get the hips up nice and high. The right leg is going to the other side of the pole. The pole is between the knees, and then I'm crossing at the ankles. Okay, let's do that one more time on the left. And remember, when we're inverting, you can totally do this from the floor with trousers on and socks on, but when we're doing this at the pole, I really don't recommend trousers or socks. Okay, we want bare legs. We want all of the grip that we can get. So the pole is in my right armpit, left hand is on top, left leg comes around the front, get the hips up, bring the back leg behind. So you've got the pole between your knees, so your back leg, your right leg, the knee is kind of going out to the right, and the foot is going to the left, so we are crossing at those legs. And I want you to think when you're practicing this on the floor about squeezing your legs into the pole. So you're squeezing from your toes all the way to your thighs as much as you can. And it's totally fine to spend as much time as you need just working on your leg position on the floor, because until you are confident with where your legs are going, it's going to make going upside down a lot harder and scarier. Okay, now let's talk invert technique first, and then we'll finish with all of the different options for getting upside down if you're not yet ready. Okay. Now, there is a big debate in the pole industry about whether we should be stepping into inverts or not. And for me, I think there's a sensible middle ground. People go too far on extremes on both ends in this one. So we don't want to be throwing ourselves with no control. We don't want to be doing this big, like, run and flying around, okay? Because one, we're just not going to get up, but two, you're more likely to hurt yourself. But equally, expecting beginners to be able to fully lift their entire body weight when they first learn to invert, and not allowing them to invert until they can do that, in my opinion, is overkill. Now, I was starting to doubt the way that I teach inverts at one point, And I went and did the pole physios. It's basically an invert and shoulder mount workshop. And they said very clearly that it's totally fine to do a small controlled step whilst you're first learning. It does not put you at a significant risk. However, there are certain things that you want to look out for if you're training at home, because remember, you need to take responsibility for yourself. I am not there with you. If you're training alone at home, which ideally you shouldn't be, make sure someone's in the house in case you get injured. You need to be the one to listen to your body. So you need to decide when you're ready, but I will give you hopefully some tips of what to look for and whether or not you are actually ready or not. Okay, so blathering on, let's just talk the basics and then I'll talk some of the things to look for. So we're going to start with the pole in our armpit. We don't want to be like super like really hugged in to begin with, because that will make it harder. Okay, so we don't need to think like a knee raised position with our hips in front of the pole. Okay, but we do want to be quite close. So you can probably see I'm just sort of in line with the pole, and I just have a little bit of a gap between me and the pole. We do not want to be starting from way back. This is what tends to lead to loss of control and is more likely to make you spin. On that note, a lot of people prefer to learn to spin on static. I am actually against this because I think it hides when you are, whether you are using control or not. Because if you don't use control on a static pole, you can still kind of get away with it, right? But that doesn't mean you're using your muscles correctly. On a spin pole, if you're not doing it correctly, you're either just not going to get up or you're going to spin around really crazy. So it will tell you that something's not quite right in what you're doing, okay, or that you're just not ready yet. Okay, so for me personally, I actually would say stick it on spin and it will test whether you're doing it right or not, because you shouldn't spin really dramatically even on a spin pole. So in the armpit, outside hand's going to come on top. Now we don't want our hands too high, because the higher our hands are, the higher we have to get our hips. So we want to have them fairly low. Most people tend to be around head height. Some people like to go a little bit lower, but I find the lower you go, the harder it is to engage the correct muscles. So you don't really want to go below the shoulder or above the head. Somewhere kind of in this spot is good. Okay. We're going to step on the inside leg, so the leg closest to the pole. And we're kind of using this to start getting our hips to come forward a little bit, but we don't want to think about traveling forward. I'm not going that way, okay? That's the first thing to get out of your head when you're inverting. You're not traveling forwards. You are tipping back. So we are rotating. The way I think of it is football table. I don't know what you think in America, you call it foosball. Where the men have got the rods through and they're rotating as you're kicking the ball around the table. It's the same kind of motion. If you want to get your hips up, your head has to come down. So you want to think about going up, okay, with the legs, but back with the chest. We're like rotating around that rod, okay, in our body. I don't know where it would be, probably in our hips, okay. So outside hand is on top. You step on your inside leg. And then your outside leg is the one that is swinging up, and you're just going to tip. So I'm going to put mine on side just so I'm not moving when I'm showing you this, okay? And I'll show you from a few angles. We'll do right and left. So outside hand is on top. I step with my inside leg, okay? And my outside leg is going to swing up to the front of the pole, and the other one's going to come behind. And as I'm doing that, I was looking back behind me. We're going to squeeze really hard, but then when we're ready to come down, we're going to release the grip in our legs and our hands. And we always want to slide the whole body together and make sure you wait until you feel the floor behind you. One of the greatest risks of injury with inverting is the dismount, or if you just don't get up, which we'll talk about more in a minute. If you're jumping out of your invert or just falling down to the floor, that is when you will hurt yourself, because you are not stabilizing anything as you fall. And really common injuries with this one is like the pain between the shoulder blades, that's quite a common one, or pain between the ribs. But in theory, you could injure anything, okay, particularly in your back. So we always want to slide until we can slowly descend. So what I'm looking for before I let people stop sliding is you should be able to control really, really slow down, which means you probably should be able to lift up as well, okay? So that's really, really important, always sliding to come off the pole. Safety first. Okay, let's just do some right and left, and then we'll talk about some of the things to look for. So, right side, I have the pole in my left armpit, and I have my right hand on top. Remember, we need those hands about head height. If you're struggling, keep bringing them down until you feel a bit more comfortable, but don't go too low, remember. We don't want to go below the shoulder. Hands should be really close together. We don't want a gap. So they should be practically touching each other. Okay. We're going to step on the left leg as the right leg is the one that swings up. And I'm thinking about my legs going up, so traveling up, not forwards. And I'm thinking about looking for the window behind me. Okay, so I'm going to look backwards. So step left, I reach right, I tip, I look for that window, I get my legs on, and remember, we always slide down. You will learn some different dismounts. I think quite a few of my videos teach you the dismounts as well as the tricks. So there's going to be options. Let me show you from another angle for that one, and then we'll do left. So left armpit is on the pole. Right hand is on top. We have just that little bit of a gap, and we're kind of in line with the pole. I step with my left leg past the pole, and then I'm thinking about traveling up and looking back, this time towards my camera. Legs on in the right position, crossed, and slide. Okay, let's do the left side. So now the pole is in my right armpit. Okay, I'll show you from the front first, then the back. Left hand is on top. I'm going to step on my right foot, and my left leg is going to swing up. We do need to use a little bit of momentum while we're first learning. Momentum is not a bad thing. We use momentum for all kinds of things in various sports, in various day-to-day life, okay? Remember, there's a difference between controlled momentum and uncontrolled momentum. So we're going to step right, swing the left leg up around the front of the pole, right leg comes behind, and sliding down. Show that from another angle. Remember, I could do this in trousers and socks because I've been doing this for a very long time. When you're first learning, make sure you've got all of the skin grip so that you are safe. Another important thing is if you're just getting your foot up and you're using your foot to get your hips up, that is okay. I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. Okay, it's a part of the process. So now I am in right armpit, left hand on top. We're going to step onto the right leg and swing the left leg up. And we're going to slide. When you're sliding, don't let your feet and your bum come first. Try and make sure your whole body is going as a straight line down to the floor, because otherwise you are likely to fall and might hurt yourself. Okay, so what I was saying about the hips. So when we're first learning, it's quite normal for people just to get like a toe on, okay? You can use that toe to get you up. So push that foot into the pole and thrust your hips up to the pole, and you should be able to get your legs into that crucifix position. So if I've just got my toe, I'm going to push, I'm going to bring it around the front, and then bring my back leg around. So that's totally normal. A lot of people invert like that to begin with. It will just get better in time. Okay, things to look for. Well, the first is the traveling forward. We already spoke about how we don't want to do that. So we don't want to be like this, okay? Always think about traveling up. Next thing to look for is repeatedly falling down. So if you're just getting your toe up and you're able to get your hips up and you're sliding down, you're probably going to be fine using a bit of momentum in your invert. But if you're constantly falling back down over and over with no control, you may just want to step back and look at some other strength training and some other things, because that is really, for me, that's where a lot of the injury comes from, because as you're falling down, nothing is supporting you, everything relaxes, and it's when you're really likely to pull something, okay? Another thing to think about is making sure you're definitely tipping back. So a lot of people, they'll get their legs up, but their chest is still up, okay? It's got to all happen at the same time. Head goes back as hips come up. I think that's the most important things. So finally, let's talk about all of our no invert entries. There are already 2 more advanced ways to get upside down without inverting. You will find them at the top of the intermediate syllabus. And that is a climb, a side climb, and I think also actually there's a Hello Boys entry as well. But like I said, these are more challenging. So let me give you a couple of options we can do close to the ground. So first one is to use a chair. But if you are training alone, this might not be practical because the chair may then get in the way of the tricks you're trying to do. But if you want to try it and you've got someone handy who can pull the chair out of the way, this is an option. So you're going to put the chair just a little bit in front of you. Okay, play around with the distance. It depends on how long your legs are. And we set it up the same. So I'm getting ready to invert. My outside hand is on top. And with this, I'm going to put my inside leg on the pole. So if the pole's in my left armpit, that is my left leg. If the pole's in my right armpit, that's my right leg. Okay, that's the one that's going to go on. And you're going to use the chair to push up and then reach your leg to the pole. It just makes it a little bit easier. Now, if you're sliding straight down, just be very aware of where your chair is so you don't land on it. Or like I said, having someone available to help move that chair at the end, it is going to be really, really helpful. Okay, so that's your first one. You could use a chair or some other surface that you can stand on. Some people use exercise balls to help people get upside down. I would probably put that under your bum and use it to tip, but I don't have one available right now. Okay, other options. So the next one is to bring the body lower. So I'm going to walk my feet forward. I'm going to get right in my armpit. Okay, so this time I'm really hugging. I'm going to start to walk my hands down and my feet out. And then when I can, I'm going to reach my leg up. You're going to be low to the ground, but that's okay. There's a lot of tricks actually you can do that close to the ground. So there's nothing wrong with using that as an option while you're first learning. And I've said it 1,000 times, and I'll keep saying it. It's okay if you never invert. I don't think there's ever been a student who has never inverted if they've stuck at it and they've worked hard and they've kept coming to class. But some people, it takes a while. It can take years for some people. That's totally fine, okay? There's no pressure here. This just opens some extra doors if you want to try some of the tricks closer to the ground. And then the last option is from like a side spin type position. So I need my leg for this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook my leg onto the pole like a side spin. And in fact, I'm basically going to a side spin position. But I'm going to have one hand above and one hand below. Both are thumb up. And this is going into more like a leg hook. I'm then going to slide my bottom leg out, slide the top hand down, really squeeze that top leg. And you could either go into your crucifix here or into things like your Gemini. Okay, so there's lots of options. Okay. Hopefully that all makes sense. The key is to listen to your body. And as I've said before, if you're repeatedly falling down, that's really not great. That is where you're probably more likely to hurt yourself. Rather than the up motion, I'm more worried about people falling out. Okay. As we get stronger, you need to start taking that step away. So one final thing is the progressions. So obviously you need to be strength training. You can't just be practicing tricks. You're not going to progress unless you do actual proper pole and off the pole exercises, okay? Or you will, but very, very slowly. But you can start putting this into your training when you're inverting, okay? So your next step would be a little step. So this time I'm going to get my pole, my hips in front of the pole, and I'm really hugging in. And this time I'm going to do exactly the same as before. I'm still going to do a step, still going to tip back. I'm still using a little bit of momentum, but I've taken away a little bit of the momentum by hugging into the pole more. So we've just taken away that first, if I'm here, that first little bit of oomph, okay? We're just making it a bit smaller. And then in time, you will learn to just think, right, knee raise and tip. So that's why it's really important to practice things like your knee raise, your short arm hang, okay? Anything like that is going to make a big difference to your strength so that someday you'll be able to lift. Okay, I think I've covered everything. But as always, if there's any questions, do let me know. And don't forget to train smarter, not harder.